Welcome to the Unpressed Podcast, our weekly virtual cocktail hour between two old friends on opposite coasts. I'm Jenny, a single mom living in Silicon Valley in the land of tech bros, venture capital, and questionable wellness trends.
And I'm Talbot, gay, married, living on the East Coast, dividing my time between New York chaos and Palm Beach drama.
We've survived marriages, divorces, bad highlights, worse decisions, and somehow we're still laughing.
Mostly to keep from crying. So every week we pour a drink and unpack whatever life, love, or our aging bodies have thrown at us lately.
No filters, no pretending to have it all together.
Just two friends, a little too honest and completely unpressed.
Hi, Jenny. It's been
Tim.
a couple of weeks.
It has been over a month since our last episode.
And
Yeah.
what a perfect subject to come back to today, right? Because we're going to talk about
Yes.
friendship.
Yes.
Friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I really appreciate your giving me the time to work on my other podcast and get that up and off the ground.
Yes.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a whole lot of fun. Now I have a little bit more of a handle on that and can turn back to our podcast.
That's great. Well, when we decided that we were going to talk about friendship, we had talked about and the challenges about making friends, particularly later in life. We asked some of our readers and we got some great comments, but I love that. I found that one cartoon that I sent you, right? Those two little old ladies, and with the caption, "Friendship is weird. You pick a human and decide, yep, I like this one," and you start doing stuff. It is kind of funny. I mean, that was maybe more that's what kind of happened when we were in school and, you decided to invite somebody to come play kickball and then all of a sudden you were, your friends. It was kind of different world. But yeah, friendship is weird.
Yeah, there are more opportunities when you're younger.
Yeah. But it is this interesting concept that somehow, for some reason, you find somebody who you think, hey, we've got something in common and let's go with it. But it's really, it's really interesting. I think particularly as you get older and as your life changes, as you start to step away from things like career or your kids are out of the house or you move to a new place in retirement, all of a sudden you really become cognizant of your friendships, both with the long ones like you and I have had. The fact that we've been friends for over 30 years is just one of the greatest treasures of my entire life. But then, you also realize, wow, the number of people who I would count as friends has somewhat diminished. Maybe that's because of time or because of inactivity. And I don't know, recently I have felt, and it's kind of odd for somebody who's a little bit of an introvert, I have felt like a need to try and figure out how to both cultivate new friendship, but also try and reinvigorate relationships that I've sort of let drift aside. I don't know. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah. Well, look, we as a society have overemphasized, some people would argue, romantic relationships, and we expect them to fulfill a lot of our needs. More than historically humans put on the primary romantic relationship. And we increasingly live isolated and alone with one other person or alone and not in a little hut together with three generations and cousins and everything. So as we've become wealthier as a society, we've become more isolated. Everybody can own their own home and we're further apart. Now we don't even really pick up the phone. If you want, you don't even go to the store to get groceries anymore. You have them delivered. And now I have my DoorDash and I don't even want him. I don't want to talk to him at the door. I just say, leave the package. You know what I mean? Like it's like you get increasingly isolated, but, humans all around the globe report being quite lonely. And the study out of Harvard, the longitudinal 80-year study on men, Harvard men and local Boston men, showed that social connections was more impactful on your long-term health than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
I
Wow.
think something or even more dramatic. It's like one of the most important things for your long-term happiness and health.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be social connection just with one person. That means probably social connection with a lot of people, work friends, neighbors, close confidants. And friendship's so interesting because our friends do not have to be everything by definition. Like, you don't even have to like them for more than a couple hours.
At a time, at one sitting.
Right?
Yes.
Like, you can have a running buddy
Yeah.
and you can have somebody that you mostly talk to on the phone, or you can have somebody that you just play cards with. So, friendships actually, people report a lot more happiness in their friendships than in their marriages because friendships are often around happy things.
Oh, that's interesting. Right. And
Right, you're not,
around
like,
shared
paying the
interests.
bills together, or
Yes. Right.
raising the kids together,
Right.
or, buying a car together. You are doing fun things. You're going for a drink, you're having dinner, you're walking the beach. You're
Right.
mostly doing fun things with that other person. So, friendships are super important.
Right. Well, it's interesting that the Harvard study too is about men. Because one of the guys that responded to my email about, hey, tell me about your thoughts about friendship, was a very, very close friend of mine in college, mostly because we were roommates and fraternity brothers. So we lived together and we socialized together and we have a whole shared history. And we don't get a chance to see each other very often because he lives
Uh-huh.
in DC and I live between New York and Florida. But every time we do see each other, we seem to pick things up right away. And he said that he finds it as a man particularly hard
Mhm.
to build and sustain friendships. And I think that's because in the pre-COVID world, we sort of had built-in communities. You had work buddies, you went out to drinks, you went out to dinner with work. Men were never really taught the importance of friends. Like, you
Right.
had the guys you golfed with, or you had your work colleagues. But,
And you
he,
may not have had a dad modeling
of
friendships
course, no, because I don't
for
think
you.
our fathers knew how.
Like, I don't think my dad has that many friends.
No, because back in those days, they went to work from 9 to
Mhm.
5.
Uh-huh.
They came home, they sat down and had dinner with their family, and then they watched the news and went to bed. And their whole world was about providing for their family. But yeah, and I think too, one of the things that y- y- you have a good friend when you have an ability to be somewhat vulnerable with them, or you say, I
Yeah.
really need help right now, or I'm struggling with this, or is there any way you can sort of help me with this? And guys tend not to have that kind of
Right.
easy
Right.
access to vulnerability. But it's been
Right.
interesting. So he said he's been looking for ways to really, as he said, manufacture opportunities to bring people together. And that's whether he's holding regular dinners with a different group of guys
Yeah.
and guys friends that he's bringing in. Um, but he said he's realized that particularly later in life, you have to be willing to initiate the contact, right? If you're
Mhm.
always going to sit back and wait for somebody else to invite you, then you might be losing out. And again, for some of us who feel a little bit more reticent or a little bit shy or a little bit more
Mhm.
introverted, that can be really difficult.
Really difficult. And the research shows that there are two key components to making good friends. One is repeated interactions, and the other is vulnerability.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And those are, as you say, hard to get the repeated interactions as an adult. I mean, I might go weeks between seeing my friends. And then the vulnerability is really tough for a lot of people. And we're going to talk about that today. Um, we had a quote from one of our friends. I thought I would read it. I used to think that friendships should happen organically. As I get older, I'm realizing that friendships and all relationships take effort. That doesn't make them less real. I've had to be more intentional to make new friends and to deepen the friendships I already have. So
yes,
we all think that like, oh, it should just be natural. Also, like falling in love, it should just be easy and natural, and that friendships should just happen. And it's so interesting. Like they interviewed people and asked them on a scale, how much do you think friendships take effort? And the people who said friendships take effort, 5 years later, they rated themselves less lonely than the group of people who said that friendships should happen organically. It almost, almost should adopt the point of view that friendships take effort, because then you will make the effort
Right.
and you will probably be happier in the
Right.
end.
Right. Well, there are a couple, it's been interesting. The last 6 months or so, there've been a couple of articles from the New York Times on this very subject. And I was reading one of them, and they had this, what they called, and I think it goes back to your notion of basically what we're talking about is intentionality, right? They had this term called aggressive friendship, which is, to your point, this notion that there's a level of proactivity you need to take to maintain friendships, particularly as an adult. When we were in school together or in college together, those kind of things happen a little bit more organically because we were around each other all the time.
Right.
There was community that was being forced upon us, whether we wanted it to or not.
Right.
And
alcohol, which really
alcohol,
helps.
that's a different level of proactivity.
Yeah.
But I really love this notion of aggressive friendship. And
what do they mean? What do they mean?
So so there were three big things that they talked about. One is about intentionality, which is, to your point, making time for friends and going out of your way. And they said one of the big things that they said is if a friend comes to mind, call them at that moment. Instead of putting it down on a to-do list, I should call Jenny. Like, if that person comes to your mind, call them and say hello, and don't text them. And try and pick up the phone.
Sometimes I assume, that person's not going to have time, or they might not want to hear from me, or we're in different time zones. Like, I can come up with a lot of reasons why my call may not be welcomed.
And that's where you have to say, that's where you have to change your thought
We
process.
really underestimate how much people want other people to reach out to them.
Well, and again, I can tell you there have been so many times, because I'm a big believer in synchronicity. I really believe that things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been so many times where I have done that. I've taken the time somebody's popped in my mind, and I've called them, and they said, "Oh, it's so good to hear from you. I'm kind of having a tough day. So it's really nice that you reached out and called." Or, I had somebody, one of my tennis partners, who's a doctor. I had tweaked my knee on the court the other day, and he shot me a text. Now, again, not a phone call, but he shot me a text. And this is somebody I see only sporadically during the season. And he said, "Hey, I just wanted to check and hear how your knee was." And I thought that level of intentionality really made me feel great. And it gives me a different set. So intentionality was one of them.
And guys don't do that. There's something intimate about checking on you. It almost feels romantic. And I could see guys staying away from that.
Right. And it's so silly because at our core, all of us want to be taken care of to some level, whether we want to admit it or not, right? Everybody wants to be told they're important. So intentionality was one of them. So the second thing, in addition to intentionality, is proactivity. And again, this is particularly hard if you're an introvert. But what they said is you need to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
So you need to go into a room, find somebody else who may be having a hard time talking to somebody else, or somebody who's standing in a corner or something, and go up and strike up a conversation. Or be willing to turn to the person sitting next to you on the plane if they're obviously open to chatting, or whatever. And really look for those moments to, instead of have something land in your lap, really make it happen.
Yeah.
And again, by being proactive about it, you're opening up another avenue that may never have existed if you hadn't taken the chance.
Yeah. So let's talk about this, because this is really tricky and gets in the way of people making new friends. So, like, one group of people that really has a tough time are people who fear rejection. Like, if they have an insecure attachment style, which a lot of us do, we meet somebody and we overestimate, signals. Maybe they're a little quiet and we interpret that as they don't like us, or they look at their phone and they're like, "Yep, they don't want to talk to me." In research, when you ask people to meet a stranger and then rate how much the stranger liked you, we always underestimate how much the other person liked us.
Absolutely.
So the problem with this is, if you fear rejection, so you read negative signals where there might not be any, you withdraw, right? You get a little colder and quieter. And then guess what? The interaction doesn't go anywhere because you're not giving them any warmth. So that's group real. It's almost like the secure attached people just keep getting richer, right? They were born with highly functional parents. They make friends easily. And so they have more friends. So the
Yep.
rich just keep getting richer.
Yep.
So the people where maybe they don't make friends as easily, they almost have to like really get uncomfortable
Right.
and
This
just
is,
believe, okay, I'm just going to believe that this person's going to like me. So
yes.
there's a great book. There's a great book if you're interested in friendship called Platonic.
Yep.
By Marissa Franco. She's a researcher and she calls it the liking gap. I don't even think she coined that, but there's a liking gap. We think people like us less than they actually do. The best thing you can do is assume people like you. Just like walk down the hall and say hi to your neighbor and just say, I'm just going to assume. And if they don't, they don't.
Right. Exactly. But you won't take the chance. I can't tell you the number of times, both when I was young and in college and then in my professional life, because as an introvert, I tend to do this to the extreme, right? I come into a room and I immediately get anxious because I'm like, I'm trying to figure it all out. I'm trying to suss it out. I'm trying to determine who's doing what. And what that means is that I physically and emotionally take a step back.
Yep.
And so when I've talked to my friends who've become friends for years and years, and we talk, what was the first thing you thought about when you met me? They're like, well, we thought you were aloof and pretentious. And that was because I was literally scared.
But you're protecting yourself.
Right. I'm protecting myself. And again, I remember there's another great quote that said, if you walk into a room at a party and you're worried that everybody's judging you, realize that everybody has the same fear and they think you're judging them.
Right.
So they're thinking more about how they're coming off
than they are.
They're not thinking about you at all.
They're thinking no one likes me here.
And if you make the first move, if you're proactive and you go up and show that you care and show that you want to connect, bang, it's like magic. And it melts things away.
And it doesn't always work. And that's okay, right?
Okay. That is okay.
Right. But we really think everybody already has their friends, right? Like we're like, oh, she already has all of her friends. Most people are a little bit lonely.
Yes.
Most people would like more connection rather than less connection.
Right. Well, did you give that? It was that stat. Did you mention that stat? I think it said like 1 in 4 Americans at some point feel somewhat or very lonely. Did you? Yeah.
Every week?
Every week. Yeah, I get it. So
and like 1 in 6 daily feel lonely.
That's really
tough. So this is a big problem.
Big problem.
And it has adverse effects on our health. Our physical health.
Right. So the third thing that the New York Times article, again, I'm summarizing, but the third sort of pillar of aggressive friendship is to be opportunistic. And what that means is if you're headed out and you're going to lunch, call somebody and say, hey, I'm passing by your house. Do you want to come and perhaps grab lunch? Don't feel nervous about sort of those last minute opportunities to connect. Because even if somebody says, I can't go and have lunch right now, then you've made a connection and you've let them know that you're thinking about them. And that probably will turn into, hey, I can't do it today, but how about tomorrow?
Yeah.
But that ability to sort of say in a moment's notice, seize the chance and say, hey, I'm going for coffee. You want to join? Or I'm going to go for a walk. Do you want to join? Or I'm going to go to yoga. Do you want to join?
The problem is it feels like a mini rejection when they say they can't. And if you are wired for rejection for whatever reason, you will actually so let's say I want to put together a tennis game and I send a text out to a bunch of people who play tennis and nobody can make it. My instinct is, oh, they don't want to play with me, which is like, if someone reaches out to me and says, you want to play tennis and I'm out of town, I'm thrilled. Thanks for asking.
Right.
So I'm trying to just keep reversing it and saying, well, do I judge? Do I think they're desperate? Or it's really hard when everybody in the text string says no. It's really hard not to take that personally. There's no reason to take it personally because I don't I don't judge someone for reaching out to me. As a matter of fact, I think it's awesome.
Correct. Well, it's interesting because you and I have already talked about our next topic, which we'll be talking about, which is this week of no judgment, which we're working on right
Yes.
now. And this will tell you, but we'll
Yes.
talk more about that. But yeah,
Yes. Well, we'll just, now that we brought it up, we're just going to tell people
Yes.
we all this week we are not allowed to judge ourselves, good or bad, and we're not allowed to judge anyone else, good or bad,
Or
for a
situations.
week.
Yeah. All right.
Or what?
Or situations. We're not supposed to judge
That's
anything.
true. That's true. You can't even be like, what a gorgeous day. You're like, it's a day.
It's a day.
Or I'm having
Right.
rain. Oh, what a rainy
Right.
day. You're just like,
Right.
nope.
Well, we'll talk more about that. It's been an interesting journey.
Be
It's only day
interesting.
2. Yeah. But
It's
no,
already been a little interesting.
yeah. Oof. But about that tennis thing, I remember for years we had joined a club out on Nantucket, and I was always like, why am I not getting invited to more games? And I made it about me. And it's like, well, no, if I'm not getting enough games, then why am I not asking
Right.
people? Right.
Right.
And the
Right.
minute I took up the reins and said, hey, I'll put together games started flowing. And so many people said, I'm just so glad that somebody else took
Yeah.
the initiative, made the opportunity to start to put this together, because I was feeling the same way. Like, I always
Yeah.
play with the same people, and how do I get to do every other thing? So yeah. So
There's a little
intentionality.
fake it till you make it. Like there's a little fake being a super confident person
Right.
and fake believing that everybody likes you, and just get out there, and then it's not always going to work, but for the most part, people relax around you, people
Yep.
enjoy you. Yeah.
There was also another really specific. They had a lot of great things, and we can link the articles in the website when we in the chat when we post this. But there was one really specific idea that one of the articles brought up, which I thought was really fascinating, which is this notion of be a matchmaker for your friends. And so
I have a friend who does that.
yes, and I have to tell you,
It's
do.
so generous.
It is so generous. So I have a very, very dear friend from Princeton, and she seems to know people everywhere. And when Bill and I went to Lisbon last year for a few days, she's like, oh, you have to meet my friends, blah, blah, blah. Not only did she say that, but then she took the time to put together a text chain with us both on it, gave us both enough information about the other person so that we thought that we at least knew a little bit about each other.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, we met up for drinks and dinner, and we had a lovely time. I
Yeah.
haven't seen them since then, but that's because I haven't been to Portugal. And then I
Right.
have other friends who've done that, and they introduce you to people, and those people seem to continue coming in and out of your life in some fun ways. And
Yeah.
so that notion of be a matchmaker, but also ask your friends to matchmake for you. So if you're going to be in a
Yeah.
foreign country where you've never been before, put it out there and say, hey, I'm traveling to Morocco. Does anybody have a good friend in Morocco? Would love to get an insider scoop.
Yep. Yep.
So I'd love that notion of
Yeah, that's a good
being a matchmaker.
idea. That's a good I think sometimes groups feel locked, like you can't get in them. But I think it's because a lot of people are not comfortable changing the status quo. So I think in a group, there are very few startup people and a lot of sheep. I think they don't invite you to the group because they don't think it's their group. They're like, well, I didn't start the group and I'm not in charge and I don't do this. So it's so lovely when you have a starter who is like, oh, sure, join my Mahjong group. And then, join my pickleball team and do this. And they're always the yes and.
Yep.
Like, if you have the energy, I have more things to ask you to.
Right. But it's important.
So nice. Yeah.
But it's important when somebody extends that opportunity to you and that invitation, you have to say yes. Absolutely. I remember, again, out in Nantucket, I got invited to play Mahjong, and there aren't that many guys who are playing Mahjong. Now guys are starting to play Mahjong, which is nice. But I got invited to play Mahjong, and my first thought was like, oh, I'm going to be the only guy there, and all these women. And even though I know all these women, like, am I a good enough Mahjong player?
God, you would
blah, blah,
love
blah.
it, Talbot. What do you think?
So I did. I went and had a blast. And
you play with us at Point of Woods, and
yes, of course,
we have so much fun.
But when somebody invited me, my natural reaction was, oh, thanks for that. Let me think about it. And I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to say yes
Yes. The
because
year of yes.
the year of yes. Oh, maybe that's
Yeah.
our next challenge. The year of yes.
Yes. Well, my word this year is discomfort.
That's right.
So there's a lot of discomfort in making new friends.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So I had another friend who responded to
Okay.
this notion of questions, and she actually had a different take on it. And I would love to get your viewpoint. She said, I'm not sure it's possible to make friends after a certain age, at least not the deep, abiding, decade-long friendships that truly nurture us. It's more likely we'll meet people through shared interests, but these relationships are not likely to grow beyond the strong acquaintance level. At least that's been my experience.
Yes. Okay.
So there's a couple of things to unpack there, right?
Yes. How hard it is to make friends later in life and whether or not those can deepen into intimate relationships. That is really interesting.
Right.
And so we talked about proximity and vulnerability. So at work, there's a lot of proximity and repeated, but not a lot of vulnerability because you don't want to be personal with people.
That's right. At work.
So that's often why work relationships don't become true friendships. And then as we're older, there's a lot of like, I'm friends with that woman because our kids go to school together, or we play pickleball, but then nothing happens afterwards. So a couple of things. One is you have to take the next step. So you have to take a friendship that is in one category and try to move it to another. So if you've got a pickleball group and you like one of the gals, you need to say, do you want to grab a cup of coffee this week? Or do you want to do a hike with me?
Right.
You need to like move it to a different realm. And the second thing is you have to practice vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So relationships deepen because we disclose. And there's a couple reasons for this. We appear more genuine and honest when we disclose. So you're making yourself more likable not when you dump all of your problems.
Yes, right. Nobody wants that friend, right?
So apparently, like, you can go too far and you just like diarrhea of the mouth. That's not a good idea. But when you talk about, my big worry this year is that we don't have enough money. Like, that's super vulnerable. Or my big worry is I'm not sure my son's going to get into college. Or my big worry is I don't have enough friends. Like, these are, and vulnerable is different things to different people. It tends to be the thing that you have shame about. That's what makes it vulnerable. So it makes us likable. The other thing is people like it when we're vulnerable because they assume we wouldn't be doing that unless we liked and trusted them.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Which, by the way, is really the only people you should probably disclose to. You should be selective. You shouldn't just pick anybody, but people feel that you are more genuine and honest when you disclose, and they feel more liked because you disclose to them. So that's why it deepens. Then, of course, as we all know, if one of you is vulnerable, the other feels more comfortable being vulnerable because trust has been built and the other person has exposed their soft underbelly a little bit.
Right.
So it's like, my best friend Barbara and I, we met in college, and probably the only reason we're really good friends is like I went to her when a boyfriend broke up with me, and I literally was like, I'm a total mess. I barely knew her, but I didn't have any friends at school yet. And I just went to her and I was like, this is what's happening to me. And she doesn't make deep friends very easily, but she said it was easy because I was such a mess and I was so vulnerable that then she was like, well, what do I have to lose?
Right.
Like this woman's a mess.
This lunatic has knocked on my door.
Like, well, God, I'm really feeling pretty good about myself.
Right.
I'm gonna disclose. So practicing vulnerability is a key part about deepening your friendships.
Yeah. The other thing that I really found interesting about this quote is I think we sometimes put a different value and length of friendship versus quality of friendship. So yes, if we believe that the most important and most valuable and the most sustaining friendships require decades. And there are some relationships, there are some friendships that deeply nurture us because of a shared connection over many, 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 many
Yes.
decades.
Yes.
But
Agreed.
I think if we then say, well, I am now at a point in my life where I don't have many decades left,
Yeah.
to think that you can't have a nurturing relationship with a new friend, I think is perhaps missing the boat.
Yeah.
Because I think in some ways, at some point, you need to have a new friendship because you need somebody to challenge the way
Mhm.
you have presented yourself for so many decades, right? So you and I can shortcut so many different things because we
Yeah.
know each other and we have the same language. We've done a lot of the same things. And so in some ways we get to make it easy. We don't
Mhm.
have to do everything. But there have been friendships where because I haven't had a long tenured relationship, I've had to, in some ways, be more vulnerable. I've had to be more explicit about who I am or what I
Yeah.
believe or what I feel.
Yeah.
And when somebody is asking you about that and looking for you to give them that kind of information, it actually causes a deeper level of introspection about, well, wait a second,
Mhm.
how do I really feel? And when you then start to relate to people at different points in your life, because these different things are now more important than they were back 30 years
Yeah.
ago,
You've
you've
changed,
changed. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to have friendships that change with you and develop with you. But sometimes it's good to have a friendship who's like, well, I didn't know you 20 years ago, but here's what I'm seeing now. And this is what I find to be really impressive
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, and I would say there is as much value in a strong acquaintance as there is in a decade-long friendship. I think, we were talking about this earlier. You and I both have these situations where we're lucky where we get to spend time in a summer community. And I think those friendships are really interesting because you go into them and you pick up right where you left off and you
Right.
almost do it immediately because you realize your time is limited, right? You
Right.
only have 5 or 6 weeks together. And so if you spent time trying to like rebuild all the time, you would
Yeah.
never get to. And so you just sort of jump back in with both feet and you just thrust yourself back into these friendships, which
Yeah.
are probably 9 months out of the year, I would call them acquaintances. But for those 3 months, 2 months, they become friendships again. They become meaningful
Right.
because you you are both in a situation where you're now valuing the short amount of time and the
That's
intensity
true.
that you have to take.
Yeah. That's true. I think this is an interesting time because we're in transition. Like a lot of my friends are moving or they're like, people don't know where they're going to land because their kids are growing up. And one thing that's true is it's hard to trust and make friends with somebody that you don't think is going to be there in the future.
Yeah, that's true. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. So, and that's just kinship theory out of evolution, right? You want to help and be generous with the people that in the future are going to be there to help and be generous with you. And so an old friend where you have decades together, you can live on opposite coasts and still have a relationship. Somebody that you met through your kid's school, then when you know them and you haven't deepened that relationship, are you really going to talk weekly on the phone when they move to Florida? Like, it's shaking out a little bit. Like, who's going to be here for the next 30 years? Who isn't? And yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
I think at some point you have to live in the moment and say, I can't try and project where I'm going to be in 5 years or where this person is going to be in 5 years.
yeah.
Any of us could be anywhere. And you just have to say, okay, I'm going to try and not worry about how long we're potentially going to be friends or close
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
While we're together, we're going to have a great time. And if life drifts us apart, then that's okay. At least we've had, it's that song from Wicked, because I knew you. It's all about the impact we have on people
Yeah.
throughout our lives. And, because I knew you, I've been changed for good. That doesn't necessarily mean you've known them for a long time, but people come
Hmm.
into our lives and make an impact on us. And sometimes those short friendships can teach us a lot in a very short time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. And it's almost like you need to meet a lot of people to find one or two that you click with. And look, friendships are are helpful at a lot of different levels. So there's the friends that you just party with, and that's awesome. And got your friends that you play mahjong with, and the friends that you work with. And then you have the deep, trusted friends, and they serve different purposes.
Yep. Yeah. The other thing I found to be important, and maybe it's because, when I was a child, my father was a college professor. And so I would spend a lot of times with college kids who were much, much older than I was. And so I always felt comfortable with friends who were older than I am. And now I'm finding that I am trying to proactively make friends who are younger than I am. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not getting
Yeah.
stuck in just one generation, right? I'm
Yeah.
trying
Super important, I think.
to find people who are, grown now adult children of friends of mine are becoming friends because I'm getting a chance to know them in a different way.
Yeah.
But I think that notion of that cross-generational mixing becomes so important. And that can be really hard because we tend to, just bubble together
Totally.
based on
Yeah. I
our
don't
shared
have a lot of
commonality.
friends that who aren't my age.
Well, then that's a challenge for you.
I
Go out and
know. I know. So Talbot, we got a call from one of your friends, actually, who had a really interesting perspective about making friends in adulthood. So let's take a listen.
Okay.
One of the most unexpected surprises in the second or third chapter of my adulthood has been both reconnecting with old friends and making new ones. Joining a group like Mahjong, participating in a social activity like tennis or golf, or a hobby also helps. Even meeting new friends at school reunions, people you failed to get to know the first time around. Putting down your cell phone and being open to speaking to the person sitting next to you on a plane or train can open up all kinds of opportunities, or at the very least exercise your social muscle. Overall, friendships take work. You have to invest the time and energy. Those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I'm so glad she did this. I know exactly. I won't necessarily give her name away, but she'll recognize herself.
Yeah, she sounds very wise.
She is wise. She's a Nantucket friend, and so I think she
Yeah.
particularly understands this notion of community and short-term community. But one of the things that she mentioned, I really found interesting, and again, it goes back toward one of the things that the New York Times article talked about, is this need for a wrapper in friendships, that sometimes you need these common connections so you
Yeah.
don't feel quite so vulnerable. So you go into, whether it's joining mahjong or pickleball, you go in and saying, okay, there's more of a likelihood that this person's going to like me because we both like the same thing.
Well, and if you don't click, you're playing a game, so it's
Right.
okay.
And there's other people there who,
Yeah.
you can bounce off things and right. And then you may never have to see them again. But that notion of being able to find something that provides that kind of cushion, that way in, that gives you a sense of, I'm not completely vulnerable here because we know that there is something that we like.
Totally.
And I think that's
And men usually make friends through hobbies and activities.
through rappers, yes, through
Yeah,
golf.
side by side. You're not like looking at each other in the eye. You're sort of doing an activity side by side.
Right, like golf. Those
Like
guys don't
golf.
ever talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I think that's notion of recognize that, find a rapper, find a couple of different rappers
Yeah.
and say, this is the one I'm going to put on right now. And this is going to be how I find new friends.
Right. Take something you like to do and then try to do it in a group, like a hiking club. Or what I've seen is very successful is people learning a new skill. Like if you're learning mahjong,
Yes.
it's really nice to join a community because people tend to be very generous unless you're in a super competitive group. But mostly people are generous about teaching and welcoming you. So you learn something, which is super good for our brains, and you might make a new friend.
Right. And if you're doing it next to somebody else who's also learning, then there's that shared sense of vulnerability, right? You're like,
Yeah.
I'm not alone trying to learn this really complicated game. There is somebody
Right.
here who's also trying to do it with me. And we can almost kibitz together about, oh my God, this is so hard. How are you doing?
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, and I think that's, and I think that's why things like tennis or pickleball, where you've got a rotation of people within a group, or where you're playing multiple rounds of tennis, you learn how to play with somebody else. You adapt your game to them. They adapt your game to you. And it just keeps you on your toes. And I think at the end of the day, friendships keep you on your toes and give you that kind of support. And you always have to remember, and this is what we all have to do a better job of, particularly if we're feeling lonely is you have to ask for help. You have to go out to your friends. Not all of them, as you said. You don't necessarily want to be openly
Yeah.
vulnerable with everybody. But
Yeah.
don't forget to ask for help, because the best gift you can give to a friend is their opportunity to support you. And we don't recognize how important we make somebody feel when we reach out to them and say, I really
Yeah.
could use your help.
I think what we've learned through what we've read and talked about is adult friendships are harder to come by, and you have to be intentional. You have to put yourself out there, and you have to talk to a lot of people, even though it's very uncomfortable. And then to deepen those relationships, you have to move them from one environment to another, and you need to practice vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Um,
And you have to be willing to not try and label every friendship the same. You know, not every person you meet is
no.
going to become a deep, deep friend. They might become, as you said, might become a great tennis partner.
Yeah.
But if you don't do any of those things, if you don't practice intentionality, proactivity, or opportunistic friendships, if you don't try that aggressive friendship mentality,
Yeah.
you'll never find those people who are going to be,
I think
those
it's hard to develop deep relationships later in life without really being intentional. And the other thing I read was you really need to give people feedback. So you positive feedback. So you had said if you're thinking about someone, call them or text them. But there's also after you've seen somebody sending them a text and saying, "Oh my God, today was so fun.
exactly.
What a great win we had," or whatever. And this is really vulnerable, but saying to somebody, I really feel a connection with you. I don't know if I could do that, but apparently, according to the research, that really works.
Right. Right.
And what you can hope for is that there's somebody else who feels the same way. And sometimes they don't. And that's okay too. Got to kiss
Yep.
some frogs.
Got to kiss. And as you said earlier, we have to realize that particularly later in life, we live complex lives. There are a
Yeah.
lot going on.
Yeah.
And, just like we had to
There's
take
not
some,
as much flexibility.
right. Well, right.
Yeah.
And we had to take a few weeks away so that you could concentrate on something that was important for you.
Yeah.
That didn't mean that you didn't care about this and I didn't take it personally. You just have to say, okay, we have to recognize that we live complex lives, and Jenny's needing to take a few weeks away is not about me. And if I
Right.
make it about me, then I'm ruining our friendship. And just say, okay, that's great. Thank you for telling me you need some time away. And great, we'll come back to it when we come back to it. But
Right.
that does mean,
I
again,
mean, you and I are lucky though. We don't have to guess. Like if you were worried about that, you would just ask me,
like,
probably
hey,
pretty bluntly.
yes, I would.
Like, hey, bitch,
Hey, bitch.
what's up?
No, but I think again, and I think sometimes we rely on old friendships to let us do that. But I think you sometimes need to be as direct in your new friendships, and sometimes maybe more important, and just say, okay, hey, just because I'm feeling a little nervous, like it has nothing to do with me, right? You've just got some other stuff going on, and be like, yeah, oh,
Right.
it hasn't, like, great. So again, I think teeing up our next topic of non-judgment week.
Non-judgment.
I think
Let
we
me
have to.
tell you.
I think we have to look at these kind of interactions even with our closest friends, with a little less judgment, because oftentimes it's not about what's happening is not about us and has everything to do with them.
Or we might have something to do with us, but we might be interpreting it incorrectly.
That's true too.
We think
That's
it's
true.
negative and it's neutral, or we think it's neutral and it's positive,
Or they're thinking they need to give us space because we've given them that signal, and
right.
we've misinterpreted each other the wrong way. So it's like the trick is vulnerability, communication, and aggressive friendship, particularly as you get older, because it's not
Right. Because
just
we
going to happen.
all assume that everyone else is fine and we're the only lonely ones in the room. That seems to be like the default. And of course, if that's true, then everybody is lonely and everybody would like more connections in their lives.
So that means every time you go into a party, 1 in 4 people are looking for a connection and are feeling lonely, are feeling not necessarily their best selves. So that gives you a lot of people to talk to.
You know what's helpful to me is in some situations, I just assume everybody in the room has something interesting to say or something interesting about their lives. And then that makes me more open to them and learning about them. And that's as far as it has to go. But of course, that is the door opener, is
Right.
somebody being a good listener, being curious about you. And that's a little bit less vulnerable in a way, because you can ask that person questions. So that could be a door opener. Just
Very
be
good.
curious.
Be curious. But then
Yeah.
you have to follow up the curiosity with the next question and the next phone call and the next text. And
For sure. For
that's
sure.
where it goes.
Yeah. If you found the person interesting, I guess.
And if you don't waste time. Oh
Yeah.
God, I remember
Yeah. Move on.
we were match made with friends of ours when we moved up to Williamstown. They said, "Oh, we have this great couple that you need to meet. You're going to love them." We went to brunch. We left brunch and I said, "Nah, no,
It's not always a fit.
it's not. It's not always a fit." And instead of trying to make it a fit, we just called it off. We're just like, doesn't work. So
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, of course. Not everybody's going to be your cup of tea. You know?
Or a glass of martini, since it is now
Yeah.
7:00.
Yeah. Not everybody's going to be your martini.
Not everybody's going to be your martini.
No. No.
All right, darling. Well,
All
on
right,
that
friends.
note, fantastic. All right, we will talk soon, and I can't wait. It's only Tuesday, and it's only day 2 of non-judgment, and
How's it going?
There have been a couple things. One you've already alluded to. I was, yesterday I was just not having a good day. I'm like, I'm not having a good day. I'm like, well, no. I'm having a day. I'm having a day. It's not good or bad. I'm having a day. And when I stopped thinking about was it good or bad, even if I was still struggling with it,
Correct.
I just took off that layer of it and I felt better. I'm finding and we'll talk more about this later. I'm finding it much, much easier to be non-judgmental about other people than me.
Than yourself.
I'm finding that I beat myself up a lot. And that's been really interesting. But
I think you're going to
that.
find you have more energy at the end of the week. I did this 25 years ago in business school, and what it revealed for a class, and what it revealed to, well, we'll talk about this, but what it revealed to me is how hard I am on myself.
Yep.
And this time around, I'm not as hard on myself.
Good. Don't be good. Don't be hard on yourself, and don't be hard on your new friends. There we go.
Yes.
All right, darling. We'll talk soon.
Not judging one way or the other. It's very Buddhist of us.
Very
it
Buddhist.
Just is. Life just is.
Just is. Well, I'm gonna just is myself into a martini.
I'm not judging you.
All right, darling. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Love ya. Bye-bye. So if you enjoyed listening to that, please support us by subscribing to our channel and by telling everyone you possibly know. You can email us at theunpressedpodcast@gmail.com. That's all one word, the Unpressed Podcast, no spaces. You can also follow us at Instagram. Our handle is @UnpressedPodcast. Thanks so much.